At the time in our debate where the candidates get to ask questions of the other. Our format, questioner will get a 1 minute to ask the question. The respondent will get 2 minutes, and then back to the original questioner for the 1 minute rebuttal. We'll start with Secretary Mollis, a question for
Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
As Secretary of State, one of my goals and responsibility of the office is transparency and open government. That is one of the many reasons I have agreed to disclose my tax return each and every year, even as a candidate. As you know, many elected officials agree to disclose their tax returns, and some don't. And my question to Catherine is, as Secretary of State, will you agree to join me in disclosing your tax return, and will you begin to do so now as a candidate?
I am going to ask my husband about that because he's a partner in a law firm and see what he says, and I will happily get back to you about that. I filed my ethics a statement. My finances are not complicated. Let me get his permission because we do file jointly as a married couple, and I will get back to you on that.
Mr. Secretary.
And that's fine. I mean, I have to, of course, I still feel, I mean, when I also filed jointly as a married couple in the past.
In the past, yes.
And I have put my tax return online. I've made it public. And now I file single, and I still make it online.
Question for the Secretary.
Yes, sir. Betraying my age here. In 2006, you promised in writing in the Providence Journal that you would certify real estate agents to register voters, establish a business buzzer program, and launch a Through the Eyes of Our Veterans program. But after Election Day, we heard nothing about any of these. And with that track record of keeping campaign promises, how can you expect voters to believe what you say now about what you would do over the next 4 years?
The way we make voters believe what we say now that what we'll do over the next 4 years is to list those promises that we have made and let them know how we have come through with them. And those particular issues that you've mentioned, we have worked on those. Now, we can talk about, of course, the issues that we've worked on and have not come to fruition. The Voices of Veterans program, we have been working on. We have worked with real estate agents and attempted to get them working on registering people to vote. But also, let's talk about the accomplishments we do have. We said we're going to reinstitute the First Stop Business Center. We have done that. We said that we'll be able to use technology today to make it easier for businesses to succeed. We have done that through our online initiatives. We said we're going to partner with EDC and have workshops. We have done that. There's been a number of promises that we've made that we have accomplished. And so we're very proud of those. The issues that we're talking about, those are works in progress. They will continue to be works in progress like voter ID, and we will work what we can and do what we can to make sure they come to fruition.
With all due respect, the realtors, the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, never heard from you again.
Mr. Secretary, question for Ms. Taylor.
Last night we had what I thought was a very good debate in front of a crowd sponsored by Operation Clean Government. I encourage Rhode Islanders to take the time and watch the debate on public access if they can. And during the debate, we answered a question as to how we would reach the goal to reduce our budget by, I believe it was 15%. In your response, you mentioned that my office had a deficit last year. Now, I take great pride in the balanced budgets I had as mayor and as Secretary of State. I have with me Department of Administration documents that show that we had a surplus in fiscal year 2009 and a projected surplus in fiscal year 2010. So I have to ask, where did you receive this information, and would you be willing to correct that statement in this debate?
If I can see information based on what I have, I don't have it with me, I'll go back and look. If I'm wrong based on the documents I looked at, I will happily correct myself. But the information that we had, that we received online, I think through your website, showed you $90,000, just about your salary in the red last year.
Ironically, and I do have the documents, so I will leave them to Catherine after the end of the debate, and there is a $90,000 number, but that happens to be a surplus.
Okay, I will happily stand corrected. I do like to get my facts straight, sir.
Okay, question for Ms. Taylor to the Secretary.
All right, you talk a lot about how smooth the elections were in 2008. What do you have to say to the people of Smithfield and Maxine Cavanaugh?
We ran a near flawless election in 2008 with one of the highest turnouts, the highest turnout in state history. When people were sitting by their TV at 9:05 waiting to see who the new president was going to be, saw controversy in Michigan, controversy in Minnesota, long lines in Florida, they knew they had a great experience here in Rhode Island. In Smithfield, we took immediate action. Which was truly beyond what was called to do, to make sure those ballots were corrected immediately. And I take great pride in the way the Board of Elections and my office partnered in ensuring that Smithfield had corrected ballots right away. But when I look back at 2008, my accomplishments are very clear. A near flawless and smooth election, and I stand by that.
Do you think that Maxine Cavanaugh should be reimbursed her $28,000 in legal fees that she had to spend in order to make the election right before a court of law?
Go ahead.
As far as that is concerned, again, that was separate. That was completely separate from us. That was not our. You know that, Catherine. You know how the Board of Elections and I hope
it was a
how the Board of
ballot
Elections-
issue. It was because the wrong ballots were sent. And if I'm correct, that's the part that you're in charge of, is the ballot.
What her
The printing of the ballot.
what her suit was to ensure, because she was challenged on the election and she protected herself, and that was with the Board of Elections, the Board of Canvassers. You know that election day is not run by the Secretary of State.
Ms. I'm going to step right. Mr. Mollis, question for Ms. Taylor.
We were, a little while ago, we talked about the race for governor, and we talked about the fact that you worked 20 years with both Senators Chafee, and who would you support for governor? And your statement was your ticket running mate, John Robitaille. And my question is, just after spending 20 years with Senators Chafee, what would lead you, I mean, and working with them, I'm sure believing in them, what would lead you to support John Robitaille over your former boss?
My former boss left the party and he's running as an independent. And I have to say I did struggle with that too. That's something that has been very public. Where did the moderates go after 2006? I chose to ask for my party's endorsement to stay with the party, and as such, I have to be loyal to my party. I talked about it with the Chafee family, and they agreed. That certainly John Chafee would insist I do that, and all the Chafees understand. It's just how it is. You wouldn't go and support Link Chafee, would you, running as a Democrat? I doubt it.
And my response is, I'm not going to question the choice, and we all make our choices, and I respect that, and I commend it, but I will say that I think it's ironic that you have decided to support your party candidate over someone you work with for 20 years, and you called me a political insider.
You can answer
What
that.
did that mean? I just don't know what that meant.
You can ask the question. You're up next. A question for the Secretary. You can address that in a question, or...
All right. What specifically did you do in the fall of 2008 as the Secretary of State in charge of corporations and small business services, if you're so concerned about businesses, when the bottom dropped out of the economy, to provide leadership at that time, specifically to small businesses?
Number of things. We were in the middle of our master business application. We were in the middle of meeting with SBA. They had an annual forum every single year where all the general officers joined there. We listened to small businesses. I can say that I probably visited nearly every single major and probably nearly every single minor chamber of commerce in Rhode Island, heard their concerns, and made programs out of their concerns, whether it was the fact that we had a We Mean Business Expo where they can talk to state, federal, and local agencies and get answers to their questions.
Was that new in 2008?
2007 was the first expo.
All right, so in 2008, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Secretary answer the
I'm
question.
sorry.
Go ahead, Secretary.
And we instituted free workshops all year with EDC. As I mentioned, we then went forward with the online forms library. We've been very, very interactive with the business community. We have provided significant leadership to that business community, and I have to think that a number of small businesses and chambers will confirm that we have truly taken it a step further to help small businesses, to help them become successful, and to help them call Rhode Island home.
Go ahead, Mr. Lynn.
What happened, though, in 2008 in response to the bottom falling out of the economy, specifically?
Go ahead.
Again, specifically, and this is a great opportunity for me to continue listing our accomplishments. Master business application. Online. Oh, by the way, the master business application has been developed. We received, the announcement was funding, Catherine, but it has been developed. It's ready to go. It is ready. It is, when we showed it at a press conference, and obviously if you were a candidate for Secretary of State who was truly interested in helping small businesses, I will assume you were at that press conference. And at that press conference, we had a very detailed PowerPoint presentation showing the General Assembly leaders, the chambers, and the general public how this program works. It is a real program. It's not just funding. Online form library, workshops every single year, meeting with chambers of commerce. I can go on, First Stop Center. I can go on and on. We have made significant progress. We have a great relationship with the SBA. And again, I think that's one of our strongest accomplishments, is the work we've done in the Corporations Division.
All right, Mr. Secretary, question now for Ms. Taylor, please.
As you know, your party, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, conspired to mislead the Rhode Island voters by placing your friend Heidi Rogers as a candidate for lieutenant governor on the primary ballot when they never intended on her to stay there for the election. Now, as you both also know, the Secretary of State functions as chief election official, responsible for fair, efficient, and smooth elections. And so I ask, were you aware of the Republicans' party manipulation to deceive and, as far as I'm concerned, manipulate this election? And if not, are you opposed to what they did?
Those are strong charges. and I'm not even going to address the idea of a conspiracy. Do I think that Heidi Rogers did what she thought was right? I absolutely do. She's a woman of principle, and she wants to make sure that Rhode Island has a government that costs less and makes sense. She is opposed to the whole post of lieutenant governor. You've heard me on several occasions say that I disagree with that. I think that the lieutenant governor and the governor should run on a ticket. Do I think that she could have handled what she did a lot better? Absolutely. And going forward, now that I'm active in party politics, which I never was before June 30th, before I asked for the nomination of my party, going forward, I really look forward to helping my party do this better.
You are running as chief election official, and it's become public knowledge on a number of talk radio here that the Republican Party met with Mr. Healy, and that there was a conversation and potential intention to remove Heidi Rogers should she have won. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that situation. What I'm saying is that 15,000 or so Republican primary voters came to vote that day thinking they were voting for someone, when in reality they were voting for an empty slot as chief election official. As I wanted to be the chief election official. Were you aware of that, and are you opposed to it?
Yes, remember, you were the chief election official at that time, and if you're concerned about the enfranchisement of 15,000 Republican voters, then you have to address the fact that most of those Republican voters, many went to the polls and were told there was no Republican primary, or independents who were wanting to vote in the Republican primary were automatically handed into Democratic ballots. I observed this in my own polling place. Was I part of those discussions? Absolutely not.
Questions here for the Secretary, Ms. Taylor?
All right. I would like to know, you've talked a lot about legislation you've supported, you've talked about legislation you like. I'd like to know 3 examples of legislation that you supported that made it all the way through the legislative process and have become law during your administration.
Well, I can tell you there's been a number of pieces of legislation. We had the domestic violence bill, and what that is that under current law, if you're a victim of domestic violence, you can have your voter registration hidden from the voter registration ballot list, which it should be. I introduced a law which would allow the family members also to have their information hidden.
You introduced it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I had a General Assembly member introduce it on my behalf.
Yes.
And I spoke on it, and we got it approved. I introduced some legislation which allowed us to have online renewals. That required a change in the statute in the state law to require online renewals. That way, corporations can actually renew their information online. Today, over 50% of the people are doing that, and so it's a very productive piece of legislation.
Ms. Taylor.
I'd like to know why you didn't put in law or into legislation any of your priorities that I mentioned before that you promised the people of Rhode Island in writing.
I did. I put in early voting legislation, which
that wasn't in the article.
I put in early voting legislation, which you had mentioned the other day that you're against. I put in voter
And did it pass?
No, it didn't. You asked me if I introduced legislation as I promised.
I'm sorry, I meant, did you see it all the way through?
I saw it all the way through until the General Assembly voted against it.
Okay. We're going to thank both of our candidates.